So as Christmas approaches, even if you're not Christian, everyone knows the name of the Jewish baby Jesus' mother. Who was Jesus' mother? It's so well known that people think Paul McCartney is making a reference to the Virgin Mary in his song, Let It Be, when it was really a reference to Paul McCartney's mother, Mary, who died when Paul was a teenager, and most people don't know became the guiding light of his life to this day. That's how ubiquitous this Mother Mary image is. Our Jewish leader, Moses, also had a mother and a father other than God, but few people know their names. Mother of Jesus, Mary. Mother of Moses, also mother of Miriam and Aaron, Yocheved. Moses' father, Amram. This is the week, friends, when we start the second book of the Torah, Shemot, known as Exodus, the week when baby Moses is born. Listen to how his birth is described in Exodus 2:1. I'll translate. Vayelech ish mi beit Levi, vayikach et bat Levi, vatahar ha'isha vateled ben. A man from the house of Levi went and married a woman from the house of Levi. She became pregnant, and she gave birth to a son. The Torah does not mention the names of Moses' mother and father, Amram and Yocheved. Even though these two great parents were, according to tradition, amazing individuals, the Torah wants to teach us that any child can become a great person if she or he makes the effort. In fact, Maimonides, and I quote him, "Do not think that God decreed on a child from conception that he or she will be righteous or evil. That is not the case." And here's the kicker. Maimonides says, anyone can be as righteous as Moses himself, as Moshe Rabbeinu. This is the view of Judaism throughout the Bible and the rest of Jewish literature. Our tradition is positive and optimistic, encouraging people of every background to reach their highest potential. Rabbi Dov Peretz Elkins points this out and also points out something so obvious I never thought about it. It's not an accident, he says, that the great psychologists of the 20th century who were humanistic, founders of the human potential movement, were all Jews. Abraham Maslow, Fritz Perls. Their new idea was that God implanted within every one of us the ability to rise to unpredictable heights, no matter who your mother and father are or are not. Our ability, creativity, intelligence should never be limited due to our background, no matter where we came from, with the proper psychological, spiritual, intellectual upbringing, whether it be from parents or other mentors. We can become Moses, or if not Moses, we can become righteous. And you know, when you think of the great giants of all ages, most of the time, they're the Kennedys and the Rockefellers. We know about those dynasties. But think about it. Most of the time, heroes emerge from families whom one would least expect such greatness. If you study the backgrounds of the presidents of the United States, what do you find? Mostly backgrounds of poverty and simplicity, such as Abraham Lincoln, The rise to greatness comes from the individual's determination, faith in herself, perseverance, thirst for knowledge, and growth. So, the names of the parents of Moses this week are specifically and intentionally omitted to draw our attention to the fact that it wasn't his genes, it wasn't his mommy or daddy that made Moses great, but his qualities that he developed out of his life experience that made him great. And then 10 verses later, the Torah says, after some time, Moses grew up, and he went out to his people, and he saw their sufferings. There are many wrinkles in Hebrew, one letter. Moses grew up. You'd think that he got taller. He got bar mitzvah. He became an adult. That's not how the Torah defines growing up. He was able to see besiv lo tam, the burdens of people who were suffering, and not just look at them, but to see besiv lo tam, in their sufferings. He empathized with them. This is what made Moses great. He saw that people who were suffering and enslaved needed someone to help them. Not one who would go back to the luxury of Pharaoh's palace and ignore the pain of his people. And I'm telling you, friends, I don't care what your political party is or isn't. We have two Americas. And my great fear is that my children will not see what many of us are beginning to ignore. We live among our own kind, more or less. And so many people are suffering in that second America most of us don't know. This wasn't only the week when we begin a new book of the Torah. It was also the week when 4 days ago, the world laid to rest the son of Nkosi and Nosekini. Do you know who those parents are? The parents of Nelson Mandela. Nobody knows the names of his parents. He was laid to rest in his childhood village of Kunu, ending a journey that transformed South Africa. Imagine for a moment what would happen if this child of parents nobody knows had walked out of prison and said 5 words: "It's time to get them." Millions of South Africans would have died. And it wasn't the Rambam, but Father Michael Lapsley who said, "Revenge is when you drink poison and hope that someone else will die." Let me repeat that if you didn't get it. Revenge is when you drink poison yourself and hope that someone else will die. Instead of that, Mandela said, "Never, never, and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the slavery and oppression of one by another." The world was astonished when Mandela left prison after 27 years. You know what the most astonishing thing was? Not a trace of bitterness. No words of hatred or revenge crossed his lips. Instead, he repeated what he had said before going to prison for life. He saw what Moses saw, besiv lo tam, a commitment to a common society, not just for black people, but also for white people who would live together in peace as human beings. And the image I'll never forget as we leave this week. Do you remember his inauguration? The presence of his prison guard outside the jail when he came to Memphis and I met him, his knees. He could he had trouble with his knees because I think it was an 8-foot cell or 10-foot cell in the limestone. He was bent down. He was in there for 27 years. And the presence of his prison guard in a place of great honor at his inauguration was the symbol of a nation in which enemies would become friends. And if you think this is just some modern rant, do you know what the rabbis of the Mishnah say? The leader of leaders is the one who turns an enemy into a friend. Was it bad that Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison? Of course it is. It was an act of evil. Should have never happened. But the fruit which came out of those years has been a wonder to behold. He grew up like Moses. He became great from parents nobody remembers. He grew up when he went out to his people and saw into their enslavement and suffering, and he could not look away. Moses and Mandela, two leaders in different moments of history, whose parents aren't known to many, but whose greatness is clear to all. As Jews, we're descended from Moses' family. As Jews connected to the human family and Mandela, may we not shirk our responsibility in carrying out their legacy. And let us say, Amen.